Okay. Welcome. We're having all sorts of technical difficulties today, but we are here to bring you Echo. Hey.
Hello.
I'm Kimberly, otherwise known as Black Crypto Chick. This is my lovely host,
Rashona Bennett, aka RB Rising One, and they can't stop us because we have an amazing guest today.
Yes,
oh
we
my
do.
God, girl power,
all the way.
man. We have Ritu top,
Yeah.
and let me tell you something. This power pioneer, she's into data science.
Amen.
I said it, data science, and she works currently with Amazon. So we're going to tap in a little deeper to understanding her story, how she got into data science, her background, her connection with money. And I want to say before we get started with her, I want to say happy Father's Day to all the amazing fathers, the uncles, the dads, the grandpas who are just being there and present in the community and being the great father that you are. We appreciate you. Thank you. And so now we're going to begin as we echo the sounds of pioneering women who are jumping into technology, right? Jumping into AI, jumping into finance, jumping into innovation and taking it by the storm and leading in this industry.
Mm-hmm. So every time we start off, it's we normally ask what we normally ask what inspired you to invest in Bitcoin, but you haven't invested in Bitcoin. So I'm going to start with your journey from your childhood and what was the financial scape of your childhood? Were you guys talking about finance? Were you talking about money? Were you talking about, because you're a woman in tech? So I want to know exactly what was your childhood experience like with money and how did that shape your perspective on wealth today?
Yeah. So my dad was the earning member in the family, and my mom was a homemaker. And we were three kids, very close by in age. And in India, we were coming from lower middle class. So my dad used to get, because he was a government employee, a set amount of money every month. So will you get the next paycheck was never really a issue for us. Healthcare was sorted out, education was sorted out by the government itself, pension for him was sorted out. So the challenge for us was how to get by in the amount of money that you know you're gonna get.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
that was the basic issue, and that was what all the conversation was usually about, to get enough savings for the family in case you need it, as well as just getting the basic resources for us. So we never really had too much of exploitation. That was not even an option. It was getting the food, getting the education, and then sometimes you'd, like, if it was a birthday or something like that, you would kind of like splurge very little. But how things worked in the home was like my dad would get the paycheck, he would give it to my mom. My mom was in charge, so she would take some money out for savings. She would, and in India, you usually, traditionally, families invest in gold a lot. So she would like make sure we got invested in gold, and then she would give my dad a part of the money, and that was just for the expenses for the month, and that was how the household was run.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, your connection was reconfirmed.
Powerful.
Mhm.
That's so interesting. It's funny, and I had to smile that your dad used to come home and give your mom the check, because that's the same thing that happened in my household. Did it happen in your household?
Well, I was raised in a single family home, so my mom took care of all the money.
Well, I've heard that consistently
100%.
from many cultures, that the man just brings the money home. So men, bring that check home. Don't continue bringing that check home. Don't go changing.
I think it is too. When you think about our makeup, and I love this because today is Father's Day, and you think about the power of a woman, the power of a man, and when we really integrate, we understand our purpose and our strengths. And so, yes, men are beautiful. They're about protecting, professing, providing, and women are intuitive. And we're about, understanding how to allocate certain funds to make it grow. Because again, when you think about who we are as nature, we're birthers. We birth nations. So why would he not give us a check so that we can birth it and make it grow?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, okay. So you grew up in India. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You were saying, okay. Now, so I don't know, like, what are conversations, beyond your family? How does your cultural background influence your approach to money and wealth building? I'm just wondering, yeah, I don't want to lead. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I would say India, as a whole, is huge, and I only come from a part of it, so I can only speak for the kind of community that I am coming from. And culturally, I think at least my family and where we are from, it's like we're not that big of risk takers in terms of money. Like, if you ask me to, I would give you an anecdote. So I went to Atlantic City to gamble. Three
Okay.
of, three of us who are like making tons of money in New York, investment banking, consulting, tech. Three of us together gambled $50. So that was our.
Well, okay, I'm with you because I would go and do 20. Okay. So we're on the same page.
I think I do have some risk appetite, but it's very educated guesses. So I would not blindly go in with my hard earned money because I work really hard at it. I If I'm gonna invest somewhere, if I'm gonna do something with it, which is taking a bit of risk, I'm gonna definitely study a lot more, completely understand what I'm doing rather than blindly taking that risk. So I kind of have that, like, I do not mind investing my time in learning about things and taking a educated guess, but like, no, not blackjack, not roulette. Like that's kind of something that I wouldn't do.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I think that's a powerful tool. Honestly, I'm a risk taker, and I've taken many risks, and I've lost a lot, and I've gained a lot. And I think that your perspective, when you think about culturally in a whole, why you've also been so successful, because you specific amount that you're going to use to risk, because you're like, my time is valuable, and so is the money that I make, and I'm not trying to risk it all. But at the same time, you're also building wealth, and you're thinking about the long term. And I think that that's powerful. I think I don't want to go into the whole American thing, but I think culturally that plays an impact of how we're building wealth. I
Mm.
think that when we talk about statistically, they say that people of color, and I'm going to say it because I'm very blunt, Black people, they say that we are over $1 trillion in consumers, that we consume majority of our money and we spend versus us saving. And I think that now culturally, we're looking now to be more of pioneers, entrepreneurs, and ownership because of what you just said, to have what discipline with our dollars and our
Mm.
value of our time. That
Mm.
has to change.
Yeah.
And that's a cultural thing too, of also where you were born. You've seen things differently than those who were born in this soil, which we take, I think, at sometimes we take advantage culturally
Hmm.
of the opportunities that are here. That's what I'm hearing from you growing up in India opposed to here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Like, it's I do something very similar to what my parents did. So when I get so I was paying student loans when I came here, and I got
Mm.
a paycheck, and I could have like been like, okay, it's a lot of money, and I do go enjoy, I do plan trips, and there are parts of the year where I splurge, because what else, like, if I'm not enjoying some quality time with my family, then what is the money for? So that
Right.
that aside, like, once I started getting paid, I was like, okay, this, I didn't want to pay interest, so I was like, I'm gonna pay off
Mhm.
my student loans as fast as I can, as aggressively as I can. And then I set up like direct deposits out of my checking account into my saving account, like twice a month. Like, that's gone, like, that's like, I'm like transferring,
That's
I will
good.
not even like look at. And then there was this rule that I had for myself, that I am not gonna be like using money from my savings account back into checking account. So it's only one way out. So
Okay.
once all of that is gone, then I have only a limited amount of money and I can do whatever with it. But like, I kind of have a very conservative approach. I don't like kind of try to save up as I'm spending. I save first and then I spend. So that's how I
Mm.
manage my accounts.
Wow, this right here is some good.
It's just
These are
these are
really
good
some
tips.
really. That's what I'm thinking. These are really good tips. So for everyone in the back, please take notice of what she said. She
saves first and then she spends
exactly
a percentage of what she can versus you spending first and you saving.
Exactly.
And that's a good rule because I even tell my clients, pay yourself first. And in the sense, you pay yourself first by you saving, and then you say, you know what, I do want to enjoy, but this is the percentage I'm going to enjoy with the amount of money that I save.
But even with that, she started off by paying off all that debt first because she didn't want to carry the interest.
The
And the interest is the real killer. I mean, think about even people who buy houses and so for people, there's a big controversy over whether or not you should buy a house, shouldn't buy a house, or whatever. I'm not going into that right now. But the whole idea that if you buy a house for, let's say, I mean, you find these days for $200,000, then you're going to be spending, $1 million over 30 years towards that house. You know what I mean? So, these are things to consider, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. So I'm excited because we talked about money. We talked about how you're able to save and also live life, but you also are making a really, really good income.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to jump into that journey, that story. How do we get into data science?
There you go.
Yeah.
That is like, you are a hot, geeky chick.
So I don't necessarily believe in fate and destiny. I believe in odds. Even though like my life has kind of been like a lot of the things were not decided by me but happened to me. So I kind of tell you how it started. So since I joined school, even before I was like a small toddler, I saw kids going to school and I was like crying about like, I want to join school, I want to go to school. And my parents were like, you're fucking 2 years old, you have to stay at home, you can't go to school right now. Because we lived right across from a big school. So I used to see all these kids like dressing up in their uniforms and walking. So I was very excited even before I was there. And when I was there, I was a very geeky kid in the sense that I would come home and I wanted to do my homework before I had lunch. Like that was who I was. I even have like a notebook from the times where I'm like pre-examination prep. I'm like 6 years old and I have like a list of things that I wanted to. So that is kind of who I was, and I was doing good in school. And then the kind of choice was, do you want to go into like English and literature, which I loved. Then there was like biology and becoming a doctor or becoming an engineer, and sports was a very big part of my life. But like I think in India, professional sports is not even like an option. It's kind of starting to become one because the earning potential is not so much. So literally, if I wanted to kind of be confident that I'd be earning money, there were two choices: engineering or becoming a doctor. And this is a joke that's very stereotypical of like Indians, like either they're doctors. It's totally the case. Like if you want to be safe and if you want to be earning money, at that point, at least like 10-15 years back, that was the two choices that I had. And biology, for some reason, I just didn't like memorizing stuff, and I felt like that was a lot of like memorizing things. So for me it was like, okay, maths and science, that's what I'm gonna do. So from there, another thing, a bit of background is like my parents, they kind of had a lot of like, they had priorities. They were like, okay, health is the most highest priority, you have to take care of your health. After that, it's education. So I would say like among the families that I've known and grown up with, like my parents were like very, very much focused. Like they would wake up at 4 o'clock, take us to like tutorial classes and things like that. So there was a lot of focus on education for us, and that was a good foundation for me. So even in high school, I was like studying a lot. And then there's this exam that everyone takes to get into like good engineering colleges in India, and that was what I did. And I went into this college, and I had to choose which branch that I wanted to go to. I love physics. I'm a very visual thinker, and as I can like visualize things, if I can do that, then I perform well on those tasks. So physics was a natural choice for me. It was effortless. So I kind of went in and I did like a bachelor's and master's in physics. When I was doing that and I was doing those internships, very research focused, it did not vibe with my personality, even though it vibed with my skill set. Just sitting there and like looking 5 years ahead or 10 years ahead into a very small field where you're like working to increase the like whatever by like 2% or 3%, which might never really face a consumer. So I didn't like that. I liked working with huge teams and people and like putting the things out maybe in a 6-month cycle or a year cycle max, but not like 5 years of research into something that might not immediately get results. So that was my complaint with physics. And even though I loved science and I loved maths, so I was like, okay, what next then? Like, what do I do now? Like, I was very lost in undergrad. I knew this is not what I want to do, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. Um, s-
Yep.
so
I
then,
was saying, by the way, go ahead.
yeah, so then um, there's this like career fair that happens. So there's a lot of companies that come and they know what they're looking for, even if you don't know what you're looking for. So
Yes.
you kind of go around and you interview, and they have different tests and skills and group discussions and whatnot. So I sat in for everything. And what I was trying to do was just judge, are these the people I want to work with? Like, that was what I was judging by. I had a few offers, job offers from different companies for different roles I had no idea about, but like people and companies I kind of knew, that okay, this is a company I could see myself work with, these are the people I could see myself work with. And that's how I kind of decided with joining the company I did in the data science role. And I graduated from physics. And then I had like a summer, and people were asking me like, hey, what are you going to work as, and what are you going to work? And I was like, I have no idea. So literally I went there like day one with like not knowing what I'm gonna do, what data science is. I just was like, okay, I was hungry. But yeah,
No, no, no. Go ahead. Keep going. Keep going.
yeah, so that is how I started, with like day zero, day one, no knowledge of the field. But like, as I started working, I realized that skill sets from physics are very much transferable to data
Yes.
science. And now that I've been in this field for like 8-9 years or whatsoever, like there's so many physicists around me, that I feel like for me it was a great fit, even though I didn't consciously choose it, and my parameters or metrics of making that choice were not the most obvious ones that people do.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
and I was very early into the field. Like 8 years back, this field was not as big or has not
Exactly.
exploded as much as it has now. And now people are much more aware of what this is. There's many resources on the internet, on YouTube, like even data science influencers that you have on like LinkedIn and everywhere else, on Instagram. It's like it's a field that's now people are more aware of. Back then I was not, but I accidentally found myself here.
I got you. So if you were explaining it to someone who's not familiar with the field, how would you explain what data science is to someone?
Um, so when organizations or companies are making decisions, it's a tool that helps them make that decision, which is more of a educated, data backed decision, rather than something that is influenced by your gut, or like a blind guess. And so what we do is, data science comes into play at a point when your company is big enough so that it has accumulated a few years worth of data, and then you can use that to inform decisions in many different places. Like, you could use it to improve your product that you're working on. You could use it to improve the efficiency of your organization itself, HR based decisions. So wherever you have a decision to take, and if you have enough data, you could kind of incorporate statistics, which is what it is. Computer science plus statistics kind of make data science. It's kind of an overlap. It wasn't originally called this back then, but these kind of roles were always there in the industry. The tools are now improving, and that's a whole different story, how the field itself is growing. But it is just looking at a lot of historical stuff, and kind of from there making an educated guess of what can happen in the future. And that is where data science comes in.
I've heard some things about bias in data science, and I guess the extraction of the information, because it's really like computers that are doing that, really.
Yeah.
So, can you explain the concept first of bias in data science, and how it can manifest in different forms, whether it's confirmation bias or selection bias or sampling bias, and then go into how you can identify and mitigate bias in data collection, processing, and
Yeah.
analysis, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So very basic concept in data science. It's called garbage in, garbage out. So even if you have like the most sophisticated algorithm, if you feed garbage to it, it's gonna output garbage to you, and it's
Right.
not useful at all. And there is this notion where, okay, you have a lot of historical data, and based on that data you can see that, okay, certain sectors of the community have not done historically well, but you can't like go ahead with it and penalize this community just because historically this community has behaved in a certain way. So for example, when I was the first job that I had in data science was in credit risk modeling. So when you're giving out credit cards, who do you give out credit cards to? So I was doing this for a bank in India, and so you can technically use demographics and be like, okay, what is the age of this person, what is the sex of this person, what is ethnicity of this person, and based on that you can see how much was how much risk is there in giving this credit card to this person, because historically you can see how what is the default rate for this sex, and you might get good accuracy, you might be able to like navigate risk for the bank itself, but this is not ethically right, and you would not want to do that. So there are regulations around it, which is basically what I'm saying is certain features or certain inputs that you put in the model, you should not be doing that. And so like you cannot put in sex, for example. You cannot just not give a credit card to a person because she's female, or you cannot not give credit card to a person because they're coming from a certain ethnicity. So these are if you input these to your model, then you have a bias basically saying that just because of this input you could not get what you wanted. So that's where the bias comes in. And then there's also things like, for example, you have the unlock feature on your phone, which is like a face detection algorithm. And now I'm talking about the data itself. If the model has not seen enough occurrences or samples of a certain type, like for example, like I'm Indian and my face, like there are certain features of my face that will help detect unlock whatever. So just facial recognition in that kind of algorithms also, like because the majority of the people maybe in the US are like white males, everyone else gets
Yep.
so that's a lot of like bias that comes in just from data itself. And going back to like garbage in, garbage out, like the models in data science, the field will do well if they've seen enough from all sectors of the society, not just like what is making up the society right now.
Right.
So you have to look at what data itself is there. Then you have to look at the features that you're putting in, or what is being used in decision making over that data. So these are two important things that go into the algorithm, what you're using to judge and what you're historically looking at, based on which the decision is made. So at both these points, you have to be very careful, as in if you're incorporating any bias. Some of it might just be unintentional, but yeah.
No, definitely. And I know that, we started a little late, and I know we want to get in as much good questions we can before we leave here with the next 10 minutes. So we thank you for your time. Quick question. What information do you feel would benefit from incorporating data science, and how do you see it transforming their business models?
So what was your question? Can you repeat that again?
Sure, yep. What industries do you feel would benefit most from incorporating data science, and how do you see it transforming their business models?
Yeah. So right now is 2023, and then 2024 has been a very exciting space in data science to be in. Like it's like an inflection point where so how this technology is evolving is we have a lot more storage that we can do of data. So earlier it was very costly to store data, and what is happening right now is like storing data is becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. and
Yeah.
and improving the model performance can either come from like using a better algorithm or just having more data. And just having more data is something that's working for us right now. So you can have terabytes and petabytes of data, and just based on that build a very simple algorithm and your model will do good. So that's been working really well. The second thing is compute, like the hardware itself which the algorithms are running on. They are also getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So you have like a lot of compute and a lot of data, which is, can you hear me?
Oh, now
Okay,
now we
yep,
hear
yep.
you. Now we hear you. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Yeah.
data compute.
Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
so storage is getting cheaper, compute is getting cheaper, so you are able to build better and better algorithms. And some, like a few years back, we didn't even expect, like for example ChatGPT to be doing what it is doing right now. So our intuition of how the algorithms would scale and they would perform is is getting like beaten. So technology itself is doing like really good right now, and it's being utilized in certain industries like tech. Tech has been exploiting data science like there's no tomorrow. Like they are on the
Yes.
ship and they're running it. Finance wants to be there but is not there because it's heavily regulated. So you can't
Yes.
you can't exploit it so much. So the industries where you have like high amount of regulation, the pace of growth is slow, and how much they're utilizing the technology is slow. Similarly for healthcare, you do
Right.
not see so I would say, like for people who are trying to get into data science and trying to stay relevant, this is the biggest challenge, like staying relevant, because this field is growing a lot, and every year or even within a year you have like a lot of progress, a lot of papers getting published, and technology just evolving at a very fast rate. So I would say like startups is the place to be for people who want to use this technology and stay relevant, or like tech. But the scope, I think the original question, I don't know if you can hear me.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I
Yeah.
know. So startups. So this is good because we're all about how do we expand from those who have small companies, small startups, to those who are in large corporations. And so many people are looking to not only just leave their 9 to 5, but they want to start something that is powering them.
Mhm.
So startups, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, you work for a large company, Amazon, which is not obviously a startup, but
Mhm.
you have good insight, right?
Mhm.
And that connection in itself is going to propel you for a bigger future to come.
Yeah.
And so startups, like what kind of startups
Yeah.
would benefit from
Yeah.
data science?
So I would say, uh, right now, or at least in the next 5 years, I feel like um, startups in many different fields could be using data science to improve. If you're just trying to improve your product, which is something which is very vision focused or audio focused or even language focused, these are the
Mm,
models that are doing really well. So if you're like trying to build something that's for like translating, so technically there was a human that was sitting and translating stuff, right? Now you have models that are like just doing
yep,
so good at it. Like, I
yep.
mean, which is to say that yes, some jobs will go away from the people who are working on it. I personally have a friend who's a translator, and I feel bad because I know that this job is not going
Mm,
to exist in the next 5 years. But
yeah.
again, if you are aware of where this technology and these models are doing well, you can kind of like then exploit that, and there's a lot of scope for you to do that if you just like fast enough to know that which are the models that are doing well. Like for example, vision recognition, that is something that
Mm,
these data science models are very good at. So if you could use that and create like, even if it is like only I would say like the doorbell security thing, like if it is only targeting a certain industry, a certain part of the whole industry, but like you can go into it. For example, Alexa, which is Amazon thing, or is it, yeah, Alexa is Amazon thing. Yeah. Yeah, so voice recognition, so these are the technology things that are something that you could build on and like kind of customize it to your target group and do well. So these are like product driven, but even if your startup is not product driven, I would say that down the line, for your company to grow and do well, you have to start storing data earlier, in whatever way or
mm,
format you have. If, because once you are at a place where your company has grown enough and you want to start using data science, but you don't have like last 5 years of data, you can't do much. So you have to like start storing and start kind of keeping this just healthy data storage for you, that like down the line when you are in a place you could start exploiting it. And that's one of the biggest challenges. Like I would personally not join a startup at like year 2 or year 3, because there is nothing for me to do there. Like there is not enough
Got
data.
you.
So
Yeah,
you
it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the whole data storage.
Really?
Ryan came to say hi. Really, that Ryan? We're on live.
Oh, I just want to say hi to a lot.
Okay. Okay. So I was just going to say that in cryptocurrencies, one of the big narratives as far as cryptos that are like highlighted are the ones that are focused on data storage, like render and storage, right? And a
Yep.
few others
Yep.
there, and they actually have been doing well. So it's interesting that you're mentioning
That
that
makes
now.
a lot of sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
There's another
Zach,
one,
we're not hearing this
Akash.
from you.
Akash is another one, my son's name.
Mhm.
Akash is actually in the cloud
Yeah.
storage. I believe Anchor as well
Mhm.
is a huge Web3.
Mhm.
So that's something that we should think about,
Yeah.
look into. I know you haven't really delved into crypto yet or
Yeah.
digital assets, but you just connected on an
Yeah.
industry
Mhm.
that we should look into more and invest in that area.
Yeah.
Like Amazon, like the Googles and like the Apples. It's the same thing happening in digital assets too as well. That same narrative. So
okay.
thanks for the confirmation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. This is wonderful, wonderful. So if there's a university student out there who's not really familiar with or sure of what they're looking to get into, what sorts of qualifications would you say would be good for them to acquire to eventually maybe consider a career path in data storage? I mean, you mentioned that you were in physics,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
is there any other thing that would
um
benefit?
if your personality type, I would say, is curious, and you're like, for me, like that's the biggest thing. If I'm not curious, I'm not going to be asking questions. If I'm not asking
Yeah.
questions, I can't be answering them. So you have to be like very curious, and you would want to like feel like a detective and dive into data to kind of like answer questions and see patterns that people who are not that deep hands down in the data can get out of. So you have to be curious. That's one thing. You have to be very logical. That's the other thing. So you have to design logics. Algorithms come next, which is like you have like an ambiguous business problem, and you have to like translate it into a mathematical thing. So you have to do it very logically. You have to write down all the assumptions you're making. What is your hypothesis? What do you want to get? So if you are curious and logical, and you're good at structure, if you don't have structure and you don't have good housekeeping, things can fall apart very very fast as a data scientist. So these are the kind of like personality traits, I would say. As
Yeah.
of extroverted, which is something that people don't necessarily think of. You have to be kind of extroverted to be a data scientist, because you're working with many different teams, you have many stakeholders, you're working with data engineers, you're working with software developers, you're working with product managers, and then you're working with the business as well. So you're kind of sitting there owning the problem in between. But like as the cycle or like the life cycle progresses of the product that you're working on, at some point you'd be working first with the product managers, brainstorming on like, okay, this is something that's issue or like a stakeholder request. Now how do you have to deeply understand it before you translate that into a mathematical problem. Once you have a mathematical problem, then you can kind of sit with it, solve it at your own leisure, and then you have to work with data engineers and software developers and kind of like get that out into production. So you have to be very extroverted and coordinate a lot of things. So that's the personality type again. But in terms of skills, I would say invest in learning how to code. That's basic. That's a language at this point. That's like learning to speak Spanish. Like if you can't,
Yes. Oh my God. It's another language.
it is a language.
Yeah.
It and it is not as hard as it seems, because for me, like when I was in school, for us learning to code was not necessary. It was like a good to have. And again, this is like in the older times, things are not like that anymore. So I did not go into undergrad with a good coding background, and I was kind of like hesitant and scared because everyone else who came to the same college was very good at it, and I was scared about it. But like the languages right now, you don't have to like start with something that's as like see or like as hands-on as that, but like languages are becoming very, very, very intuitive. Like programming languages, you can really just like think about it and write it. It's literally a language, like a spoken language. So invest in it. You don't have to spend too much time in it, like 2 months of it or things like that, and leverage in your learning. I would say ChatGPT. I'm like a big believer in that. So if you are trying to learn something new, for me this year was like learning deep reinforcement learning. I was not working in it, and the company that I work with, like they really like putting me into like difficult situations and seeing whether I can swim or not, and I like challenges. So for me that was deep learning. And earlier how we used to learn was like go on Google and find blogs and like things like that. Right now you can use something that is a bit more structured. You can say, okay, this is what I want to learn, this is why I want to learn it, this is how much time do I have, can you make me a plan? So
Yeah.
if you do it in a much more structured way, um you stick to it, I think, rather than firstly that's the thing, and then you'll be like very optimized and efficient in your learning. So learn to code. You can give it like 2 months and you'll be like really good at it, like some high level programming language, not even
Wow.
yeah.
2 months?
2 months.
Yeah.
You listen. You
Y'all kids need to get started.
and how early before we leave? Because I know it's 1:15. Because the generation are starting early young, and I know for me, college is not always the answer. I feel that when it comes to tech and AI, that is the new trade. Before we had home economics, now we have tech. So how old would you have to be to start? Can you be 18 and older to start?
you
How
can
old?
you can be 50 and older to start, like you can be 60 and older to start, like you
Hey,
cannot be,
beautiful.
yeah, you cannot be too young. You can be like as old as like 6 years old and start, but like it's never too late. I completely firmly believe that's never too late. Like people in their 50s figure things out and like just start a brand new career. So it is not difficult. Like it is not difficult at all. Like if you just like get, the hardest thing is to get started, I think. Like once you get started, it's not difficult. So
And
yeah.
you laid out an amazing plan.
Listen,
Look, I wonder if someone can look this up on, I don't want to just say Chat GPT, but Perplexity or whatever, and look up, just a overview to get started.
Mhm.
Sounds like do that,
no,
right?
yes. We have the lovely, listen, happy Father's Day again, but we have the lovely Ritu Tak, who is currently doing data science for Amazon. She gave a plethora of information. You no longer just have to go to college. You can choose a new trade, and that can be in AI, that can be in tech. Literally, I know that you can look into Udemy, YouTube to start learning. She stated it's 2 months. You can really control your future and change your life, but you have to be dedicated. You have to do some house cleaning, be structured, right? Have a logical mind and input, and anything is possible. And you don't have to wait for you to be 21. You can start as early as 6, 15, and 16. I have a 17-year-old. So I'm saying this to you. Echo in your life. You no longer have to wait to be to college to start your career. Tech is here and it's here to stay. AI is here to stay. Cybersecurity. Take life into your own hands. Thank you so much for taking the time with us. We just enjoy your wisdom, your knowledge,
Energy,
your
all of it.
energy.
All of it.
To all my beautiful Echo community, we want to thank you, Zawadi, Lovelace, BK Crypto, of course, always joining. Journey to Wealth. We want to thank Jump Out Girls. And my partner wants to say something.
I did want to say that if anyone wants to contact you, are you on social media or anything like that?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn? Okay, so you can find her on LinkedIn if you have
To
any
get
questions.
some questions, some
Or
input.
maybe offer her yet another job.
Sure. Never say no to that.
I know, right?
She is happy
I'm
where
just
she
saying
is.
that. Exactly. She's happy where she is.
But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
and
both for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Hope to see you in the future.
Happy Father's Day to you amazing men out there, protecting, guiding, professing. We love you. Just keep giving us the money so we can make it grow. As Ritu said, her dad gave mommy the money and she made it grow.
Bye.